everyone, Rascal here.
And Mama, welcome to our podcast.
Today we're covering the Spidey movies before the MCU, The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2.
In this dark retelling of the Spider-Man origin, Peter Parker is bitten by a genetically altered spider. He gains newfound spider-like powers and ventures out to save the city from the machinations of a mysterious reptilian foe. Machinations!
Yeah, where did that come from?
I have vowed I will never watch either one of these movies, but Rascal, being the shady Hitachian twin that she is, tricked me into watching the first one, and then I went ahead for the ride and watched the second one.
Yeah. And the first one, I was kind of stunned how they went with this. I mean, I knew it wasn't the most popular out of the Spider-Man movies, but it does have a small fan base for liking that it was dark instead of the lightheartedness that it's been known from the first movie, and for the MCU, they like that it was more disturbing and mysterious and stuff. So for the people that like that, that's great. And for a long time Spider-Man fans, they were kind of shocked they actually went here because it didn't even feel like Spider-Man. No, until like maybe over an hour into the movie, it didn't feel like Spider-Man. It felt like someone's weird student film with a dark, when they like do a dark reboot and it's a new origin story. And it's not really a new origin story, but they attempted to give more of a backstory of what happened to the parents.
Right.
And what led to them, to their deaths, because how he ended up living with the aunt. So they take the longer route on showing him more as Peter Parker than Spider-Man. And it pretty much has a crappy life because we saw his school and everything is like, okay, this place is depressing.
Right. Now I have to say that my favorite trilogy for Spider-Man theatrical movies was the ones with Tobey Maguire.
Right.
Of course. And not until Tom Holland did I fall in love with the Spider-Man theatrical or MCU movies until now with Tom Holland. But I have to say, after watching these two, I really didn't want to watch Garfield do it, but I have to say, it has nothing to do with his acting.
That's true.
Because I watched both of these movies and I was really impressed with the quality and the caliber of his acting.
Right.
He was very natural. He seemed very believable. He was awesome in as far as portraying the character, as you said, in the dark vein was supposed to. Right. So I have to say that it, not having this at the top of my list now has nothing to do with his acting. He's a fantastic actor, and I would love to see him maybe in some more movies. I don't see him anywhere now.
Right. And that was the thing. I had no problems with him playing Spider-Man. He played whatever type of Peter Parker they were going for this movie and the sequel. He played well. Nothing wrong with him whatsoever. It's just that the story, I get that they were trying to do something different. They wanted to have a grittier, darker, more personally conflicted Spider-Man, and you could tell it's only slightly dated by some of the things they do on there and the effects and stuff, and trying to make it edgy and zoom in on this, research that, and do this. It's like, okay, yeah, you kind of dated this, but it was a good effort into do something different, because until like over an hour in, it just feels to me more depressing, because it opens up, what happened with the parents, how you end up with the aunt and uncle, and then you actually see him with his aunt and uncle for a little bit until Ben is killed, and you see that it was his fall. They kind of changed up the little bit of what happened to it, where it was more, even more cold-hearted than the originally had, and then when they got to Spider-Man, and then he actually started being more, comedic, and then it started to change and the tone started to change. That's when it started for me being more appealing, because it was weird seeing this dark, depressed Spider-Man. Everyone at the school's a jerk, picking on him, beating him. He doesn't have a job. It was just like a non-stop ride of just, I guess they wanted realistic, because they said everything was supposed to be realistic. So I guess this is how it would be without the Marvel part in it. This is what it would be for him.
Now I have to say, this is not realistic in the terms of how everyone's life goes. How everyone's life, I should say, goes when negative things happen. So that, I say, bullcrap. I say this is the way they wanted to portray the character. It was like the flip side of what we know and love about Spider-Man, being upbeat, positive, as his uncle said, with great power comes great responsibility, him embracing it, and him putting people ahead of himself and his powers and being a hero. This was totally the opposite. Now, that being said, this was a commercial success. It took between $200 and 230 million to produce, and it grossed over 757 million at the box office. So it also could have been because people were really hungry for another Spider-Man movie after the big gap between Tobey Maguire.
I do remember
and this one
ads for this.
Right. So I have to say that I think that's bullcrap, and that this is not how life is for everyone. I think they wanted to do a flip side of Spidey, which they succeeded in that. They absolutely positively succeeded in flipping the story and making it, as you said, dark and brooding and depressing, as if Spider-Man, if he weren't so upper and chipper and positive, this is how he would be. Interesting take.
And it also had quite a few stars in. Of course, Andrew Garfield had Emma Stone, Campbell Scott, Sally Field, Martin Sheen. I was surprised with a lot of these people in here. And then you had, you know, the villain, the Lizard.
And Sally Field is Mary Parker. Never knew that that she actually played that role in the movie. I was really surprised that they hadn't, and that during the time this movie came out, of course, she was a big star, an Oscar winner, so it was no small feat having her in the movie.
Right.
And Dennis Leary as Stacy's dad. That was interesting too.
And they had
Gwen Stacy.
Right.
Stacey.
And they had Reese Ifans as the Lizard, like we said. Well, it's interesting here. This is when they started this trend.
I said Mary Parker. You didn't correct me. You know I mean May, guys.
They also started this trend of like nobody wearing a mask anymore. Everyone knows everyone's identity, because in here, after like maybe 30 minutes of the character's introduction, he knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and it's like, what the heck? In fact, now every time Spider-Man faces a villain, they end up finding out his identity.
This was sort of like a precursor to the, I was going to say current, but the just ending MCU universe with the Avengers, where in the Avengers universe, nobody's identity was hidden anymore.
Yeah,
everybody's identity was known, and they were known to be superheroes.
I don't know. Maybe that's starting to phase out of popularity. Where keep your secret identity. You see me, people say, "Oh, that's stupid. Why can't you just tell people who you are? So you don't have to hide anymore and keep the double life." Well, you see why? Because then the villains are relentless, and they come after them constantly and putting everybody in danger. This is why you need the mask. But now they've changed it.
And also with that approach, you make the superhero a star or a celebrity, which is not what a superhero is supposed to be, and a good superhero doesn't want to be. So you put them in a whole nother element and put them in the limelight, which is where they don't want to be or need to be. They need to be helping the people. Right.
Now going into the second one, Amazing Spider-Man 2, that actually was a whole lot better.
I hated the ending. I absolutely positively hated the ending of this movie, and anything positive that I got out of it was gone by the end of this movie.
And while the first one got praised for it being a darker tone and Andrew Garfield's performance, this one seemed to be just getting mixed reviews. Like, some like it, some don't. Some hated the sequel, some love the first one, hate the sequel, or like both, or like the sequel more than the original. It just constantly depends. And for me, it was better at first. And it was actually way more lighthearted. It felt the cinematography was brighter. It wasn't the dark, dreary stuff like the first movie.
Very true.
He had his quips. He had the villains. It was more lightheartedness. There was fun. There was still an engaging plot. You had Electro introduced, and the Green Goblin, which was unusually different this time around. Electro, I was actually fine with them changing this one around. He was played by Jamie Foxx, and he was more of a sheepish, nerdy person, and then he was pretty much emotionally.
He was really beyond a nerd, because it seemed like because of everything that had happened, he had some issues that people weren't helping by the way they treated him. Right.
And then when it got to the part where he became Electro, it got more understandable why he was turning on people, because they were just all pretty crappy towards him the entire time.
Now, this one also was a box office success. It took a game between 230 $200 to $230 million to make, and it grossed over $700 million at the box office.
Right.
So it again did very well, like the first one.
Right. Now, the thing I had the most issue, and a lot of people did, was for the sequel. They introduced Green Goblins, kind of, and they had both Norman and Harry. But the thing was, they weren't at all the same we've seen in the original trilogy, nor the animated one. Because in this version, Norman was gravely ill, Harry was more of like a recluse and snobby and uppity, and his father was dying. He wanted to pass on the company to him, and then Harry just wanted it because he wanted to run it his way. But then apparently he passed down this illness to him, so now he was getting sick faster and dying, and then he needed some cure for Spider-Man, I think, was supposed to help him, the mutant gene, and then Peter wouldn't help him, and he got mad, and then he was hiring Electro, and then
that's one part of this movie, I'm glad you brought it up, that did not make any sense.
No.
If this was your best friend, and your best friend came to you and needed help because they were dying, Spider-Man or no Spider-Man, in the real Spider universe that we know, and the Spidey that we love, he would have helped him. But in this one, he turned him away, and it was just left a very sour taste. It left... Ugh.
And they kept saying this, that you don't know what the gene will do to him. Like, it gave him powers. It could kill... They're saying it could kill him faster.
Okay, but
or
then
give him powers
he didn't
or
know,
something.
like he told him. He said, well, Peter, you didn't know when it happened to you. And that was a really valid point. So him saying, well... It worked well for me, but because I don't know how it's going to work for you, I'm not going to give it to you. Sorry, bye-bye. What the...
Yeah, and people really hated that, especially I remember Doug saying they just hated how they had them written. They killed off the dad instantly. The son was getting killed off faster and just turned into a bad version of the Joker, and then didn't even have his costume on. He just had on some green metal suit and a hoverboard, and was looking pale, like pasty and stuff. It was like, what's this movie even turned into? And then the fight scene was weird. It was just doing all sorts of things. And then you get to the end, it's like, what just happened?
Yeah.
And it looks like they were gonna bring in the Sinister Six based on the after post-credit scene, and then when he's back into fighting because he had stopped being Spider-Man for a while, and I guess they were gonna bring them in for a third Amazing Spider-Man movie, but then it got rebooted into Spider-Man Homecoming for the MCU.
Thank goodness! It was a much, much better choice. This is one of those rare times where a reboot actually was needed and worked out perfectly. And again, I hated the end of this movie. And anything that I did see that I liked more in this movie, like the relationship between he and Gwen Stacy. I liked it was developing. I liked how it was going. I hated the end. And that just totally ruined the movie for me.
Yeah, it was just weird.
And I don't use that word often, but this is one time I'm going to use it. And I just thought, why? And then they show him trying to recover, and then he goes back out into the world. But it was a weak ending after that crappy climax. And it was a very weak ending. And it was a bleak ending. It was a hopeless ending, even though he went back out and started being Spider-Man again.
Yeah, and I think the message was to be, this is hard, but you need to keep going. And you have the people behind you. And
I understand the message, but it sucked. And it just was crappy and bleak. The way in which it was done and written, I just didn't care for. Now, I'm sure there are you out there who probably like this movie. I'm very sorry. I'm glad you can find the positivity and the good in it for you and what makes you love it. But for this Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2...
It's not so amazing.
No, it wasn't. And if it hadn't been for Rascal tricking me, I never watched
I wasn't even tricking you. I was like, Mom,
she tricked me.
Mom, this thing is...
Because I'm like, what do you want? Oh, Spider-Man. And then I'm like, wait a minute. This isn't Spider-Man. This is Andrew Garfield. Yeah. But I already had watched 30 minutes.
Yeah,
so.
And I was like, did this get any better?
So that being said, for those of you who do like this 2-part universe with Andrew Garfield, let us know for you, what were the positives and what were the things you really liked about this version that made it real for you? What are we missing? Let us know in the comments below.
Right. So, thank you so much for watching. I'm Rascal Entertainment.
And I'm Mom Entertainment.
Have a toontastic day.
Peace.
And reporters sitting flashing lights, trying to walk around, man. sunlight from the sky in my pocket. Give it to you later on in the